Hello, everybody, and welcome to the TeacherCast Podcast. My name is Jeff Bradbury. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for making TeacherCast your home for professional development. We have a fantastic show today. Today, we're going to be celebrating Computer Science Education Week, and we're going to be talking to the Executive Director for CSNYC all about coding, programming, and why it's important for your teachers to learn a little thing about coding and bring it into your curriculums. We, of course, want to hear about everything happening in your school districts and get some great feedback on how you guys celebrated the Hour of Code. There's, of course, several great ways that you can connect with me and everybody here on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network. You can, of course, find me on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave me a voice message over at teachercast.net/voicemail. Email me over at feedback@teachercast.net, and we really appreciate it, especially this time of year when you subscribe to us on iTunes and YouTube over at teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. And I want to remind you guys, now is a great time of the year to leave us a nice review and 5-star rating over there. We really, really appreciate it. And again, one more time, thank you so much. We have been celebrating Computer Science Education Week all this week. We just wrapped up a great show over on the Tech Educator Podcast where we had our friends from Scratch on to talk all about why coding is hitting every student right at the right time in their education. Today, my guest is Michael Preston, the Executive Director of CSNYC. Mike, welcome to the show. Welcome to TeacherCast.
Thank you. It is a privilege to be here.
Thank you so much for spending your time today. You're the Executive Director of CSNYC, and you guys are on a mission to bring coding to every student in New York City. Isn't that right?
That's about it. We tend to say computer science because we define what we're doing more broadly than coding. Coding being, one part of the basics tool set that kids are going to learn as part of a robust computer science learning experience. But we are, I could tell you the entire story in a short amount of time, but CSNYC is a 3-year-old nonprofit that was started with a mission to bring computer science to every student in the New York City school system, which is about 1.1 million kids now. But last year, we began a 10-year partnership with the New York City Department of Education and City Hall to bring together our resources and theirs to do this for real. So we're now just beginning year 2 of 10, and it's actually our first year of implementation. And so we're offering schools annually an opportunity to get on board and start doing something related to computer science.
My next guest is a superintendent in South Jersey from the Waterford Public School District, Mr. Jay Eitner. Jay, how are you today? Welcome to the program.
Hey, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on, Jeff.
And talk to us a little bit about your school district. How are you guys celebrating Computer Science Education Week?
How are we not celebrating Computer Science Education Week is the better question. We have everything from the Hour of Code to guest speakers to a mini presentation that's been rotated through each of our classes emphasizing girls and coding. I think that's been one of the most impressive things that we've done so far this week in terms of Computer Science Week. And we're also celebrating the Computer Science for All initiative, which was derived from the President of the United States this past year, mentioned in the annual State of the Union address, and we've been utilizing the resources under the hashtag CS4All and having a great time doing such.
I love the fact that my two guests today are working really hard towards bringing computer science towards every single student. I want to start today with Mike. And Mike, let's just kind of start at the beginning here. You had said it's not coding, it's computer science. And I was hearing all these words. We've got coding, we got programming, we've got... Could you just help us and figure out where to start? If somebody's listening to this show that has no idea about any of this stuff but wants to get involved, could you help us lay some groundwork, give us some definitions here?
Sure. It's something that we talk about all the time. I think coding has gotten a lot of attention as a it's kind of replaced or become a stand-in for many of the other words just because it's easy to think about. Code.org launched in 2013, and they have done an enormous, really impressive job getting computing in the mindset of so many people and getting great activities into the hands of schools for the Hour of Code, as well as longer activities and curriculum. But I think they would agree that coding is just one piece of the puzzle. It's in some ways it's like the difference between writing and literature which is computer science, and like syntax and grammar and making sentences, which is coding. So you have to learn to code in some form or another, and that's a generic enough term that could mean any different kinds of languages, but using computer science fundamentals to make things happen. So you're instructing a machine with code, but when you're trying to, if you're writing an essay, you're trying to figure out what you're saying or what your argument is, that's computer science, and it can take a lot of different forms.
The neat thing about Computer Science Education Week and learning all these different skills is it really doesn't matter these days what device you have in front. Many schools are using, coding activities through Chromebooks, iPads, iPhones, desktops, Macs. It seems like anybody right now has the ability to bring this into their curriculum.
That's right. I think what's exciting about it right now is that there's this explosion of new curriculum or more attention on what's already out there. There have been a lot of groups. NSF has been funding the development of computer science curriculum for more than a decade, and we now have some really good evidence-based stuff. The AP course, the Computer Science Principles, which is the College Board's most recently developed new AP exam, is officially launching this year with multiple different curricula that you can use. So there's really no shortage of big and small things, on-ramps, new things that you can do in the school for an hour or a day or 20 hours, and then, full year curricula. So there's so much stuff. We recently launched a website at csforall.org, which is representing kind of a national network of organizations in the mix, including content providers, districts, researchers, funders, and so forth. And if you go there, about 100 of them, we have about 300 members now, and at least 100 of them are content providers. So you can get a sense of all the different stuff in play.
Now, one of the things about this whole Computer Science Education Week is that we're trying to get teachers to, I don't want to say drop what they're doing, but introduce this concept of let's take 1 hour and bring some kind of coding computer science activity in there. Many teachers out there I know are looking at it going, well, what if that activity doesn't relate to my curriculum? Do I get in trouble? Do I do something? Or what can I do in coding that might equal the lesson I'm supposed to do today? I got to start off by asking you, what advice do you have for those teachers who are not sure where to start, not sure why we're doing this? Talk a little bit to those teachers who might be a little skeptical of this whole thing and really might be just a little intimidated.
That's a really good question. I bet you that's a question that a lot of people are asking this week when teachers are voluntold to do an hour of code or activity or something that they've never tried before. There's two answers, really. One is that there are a lot of curricula now that are aligned with different subject areas. So, for example, in New York City, we have a terrific curriculum called Bootstrap that was started by good folks at Brown and WPI who basically created a unit of study that can be embedded in an algebra class. So kids are learning how to program to make functions in a computing environment, but they're also learning algebraic concepts. So there's an increase in the number of these kinds of things that can relate to things that teachers already know really well, and many of them are even aligned to those standards. However, I think it's also worth, as an educator and somebody who likes to learn, I would say that it's worth maybe extending yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone and trying something totally new. Most of these activities are designed for learners who don't have any prior background. It's that the purpose of Hour of Code is just to get your first taste of it. And so for the teacher to become, to have an experience where they're learning alongside their kids or just a little bit ahead of their kids, I think is a good thing once in a while. And it maybe helps everybody come to some sort of common ground in learning a new subject.
Now, Jay, you're in a district, this is your second year here, I believe, second, third year, where you're introducing all these concepts about digital creativeness, digital citizenships. Could you tell us a little bit about your story and how you are starting to make the digital divide a little bit smaller here with your kids?
So there's two essential points that you have to look at. The first one is meeting every educator and student where they are in the realm of computer science, because on a 1 to 10, some people are going to be at a -5 and some are going to be at a 20. The second piece of this is making sure that everybody that is involved actually has the technology to partake in such an initiative. So my past two school districts that I've been in, I've been focused on the idea that a zip code is not going to determine a child's education. And thankfully, the federal government and state government have been very good at providing lots of different scholarships and opportunities for getting everybody, regardless of socioeconomic status, the opportunity to get connected and get equipment to partake in such activities. So the two initiatives that I've been pushing, the one initiative is offered by the federal government as a subsidy. It was called Landline. It was established by Reagan back in the 80s, and the idea was to get all Americans a telephone in the household. Well, we've evolved since the telephone, and now we've been looking at things like, wireless connectivity, Wi-Fi in the house, broadband internet. So now companies such as, Comcast, Verizon, Fios, Cox, Xfinity Live, national cable companies are offering a program where if you are on a free or reduced lunch, and if your family qualifies for either the poverty level or a modified income level, so that's less than $55,000 a year, if your family makes a family of four less than $55,000 a year, those cable companies will offer you internet for $10 a month. The federal government offers a grant that started December 1st, just last week, for $9.75 a month. So you're paying 25 cents a month for up to, I believe it's 20 gigs of high-speed internet into your house. Getting that out to the both communities that I've been working in is really one of the cornerstones of my work right now as a superintendent, because we could talk about computer science and we could talk about coding, but again, if you don't have the tools and if you don't have the technology available to do such, it's kind of a lost cause. Even in school, in the day of BYOD and having that opportunity to utilize a myriad of different devices. The second program that I've been working with as a superintendent is called Jersey On, and it's in all 50 states, just classified under different names now. So it would be New York On, Massachusetts On, California On, etc. That program also offers wireless hotspots to those that make less than $55,000 a year for $78 for up to 4 gigs a month for 5 years. So $78, you get a hotspot for 5 years, up to 4 gigs a month. And that's really changed the whole computer science initiative. I know that sounds a little bit offset of what we're talking about with all the computer science and the hour of coding. But again, getting those people, getting those students and parents and stakeholders the tools that they need so they could understand and embrace this, that's where I come from as a superintendent. Because if you don't have a community that understands the need for computer science, and if you don't have the resources to provide those to continue the education outside of the school, you're kind of pitching to a lost cause. So utilizing those two programs, we've really been taking off the past 2 years here in Waterford.
Jay, can I ask you how you communicate about computer science to the families in your schools?
Absolutely. So it started off, Waterford is a working class town. They had their technology. They invested in smart boards and a lot of technology, but they didn't understand the reason for doing such. So now with this absolute lightning bolt of how fast technology is changing and how coding is being thrown around as a part of our nomenclature, it's going out to the community and really responding to them in a way that, look, this is going to benefit. This is almost just like math and science and social studies. Like, this is going to be a core subject because we're at that point in our lives where we have to have that basic know-how of, how to basically work a wireless microphone or how to operate and reset a computer. I mean, that's where we are. And the computer science kind of takes it to a whole new level, because now I'm telling the community members, like, look, yes, you spent $2 million on Chromebooks over the past 2 years. But let me show you what this Chromebook does. And actually, I'm not going to show you. Your kid who's 5 years old, he's going to show you. And your daughter who's in 6th grade is going to show you how she could do this, and this, utilizing simple computer science. So it's really, I hate to say it like this, but it's putting the onus on my students to really turnkey it and show the parents why this is important.
You know, Mike, it's one thing to be looking at a community such as Jay's. It's another thing to be looking at 1,700 New York City public schools. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey and how, CSNYC is on a mission to bring 1.1 million public school students into computer science?
I mean, it's interesting that I think Jay's experience is not that different from what we're facing in New York, right? Our kids are there's a huge disparity in access and academic preparation and all kinds of things, school quality across the New York City school system. And so we have, schools that don't have a lot of devices or connectivity, or where kids' opportunity to get online, it only happens at school. And so we have to, what has been wonderful in the last 4 years, let's say, a lot of the programs that we're involved in, we were founded in 2013. We helped start a couple of schools before we were founded. So technically we've been functioning for 4 or 5 years now. But prior to that, computer science was something that only existed in a few selective high schools in New York, or a handful of schools that just happened to have had a computer science teacher because they had those skills already or learned them on their own. But the idea in 2012 or so that you could teach computer science in any school was fairly controversial, and it took some time to show that could work, both because for historical reasons we had never tried to teach computer science to all kids, and secondly, there wasn't a pipeline of teachers who knew how to do it because there's no university programs. Most states don't have a certification pathway, so there was no real place to go and hire a computer science teacher, never mind program it into your school and allot course credit for it. So we're kind of sailing against the wind at that point. But after several years of pilot programs, we reached about 150 schools, had trained a ton of teachers from all subject areas, English, social studies, math, science, arts, you name it, and showed that with enough time and investment and some good curriculum, you could really do meaningful computer science at all grade levels, big and small amounts of time. So that's kind of where we are. And New York City, is as big as it is fairly decentralized. Principals make a lot of decisions on their own. They report to superintendents all over the city. And so they are on the ground dealing with families, students, teachers, making the case for why their instructional decisions are meaningful and helping people understand and participate. So what we're doing is not that different, I would say. It's just something that's just done at tremendous scale. In New York City, a pilot program might have 20 schools serving, thousands of kids in it, and people, it's kind of adorable, whereas, we're the largest school district in the country by more than double. So we have a challenge there.
So one of my questions, I guess, is how are you, Jeff? I'm sorry, Mike. How are you meeting everybody where they are?
It's a good question. So the New York City Department of Ed, which is implementing this program now, is basically offers annual opportunities for schools to apply and basically opt into programs where they can choose what kind of thing they want to offer. Actually, next week, I believe that they'll be going public with 2017 offerings that are a whole range of things where the Department of Education runs its own programs. There are partner organizations that we hire to come in and train teachers in cohorts, and so forth. And what the team does at the Department of Ed is to work with schools to educate principals about what the opportunities mean, help them choose things that fit for the needs of the school, the teachers that they think are going to be the vanguard, the first ones who are going to go through training and learn how to do this, and help them basically come up with a plan. So we assume that most of the schools that we're going to be working with have no prior experience in this work, and so it's a matter of making decisions and getting them started. And then if it turns out to be not a good fit, to come in and choose something else. So it's really trying to, what we're doing is because the district is so big, it's not really a top-down approach where there's one prescribed curriculum, but there's actually a pretty big menu. And the work on us for the next couple of years is going to be describing what that means to opt into a curriculum. In the past couple of months, Code.org led a community development project to create a framework for K-12 CS that you might have seen.
Yes.
K12cs.org. And so that's probably the best currently available document to just explain to districts what is K-12 CS across the whole spectrum. So you can start, aligning opportunities to that and saying, here's what you might do in 5th grade, or here's what you might do in 9th. So, and then matching up with available curriculum and making some comparisons.
Mike, talk to us a little bit about some of the things that are happening in those schools. I would assume that if you're going to be bringing in a whole computer science division, the kids are pretty well stocked with technology, with some kind of computers. Or what's been the biggest hurdle as far as the devices have gone in trying to bring in this kind of computer science framework?
On the device side?
Yes.
So that's something that varies quite a lot. It's not very standardized in the city. Typically, over the last 5 years or so, schools have bought a lot of laptops. Jay alluded to buying Chromebooks. Chromebooks have really picked up quite a lot because of price and the durability of the operating system and those sorts of things. So I think that they make a lot of sense for schools. Prior to that, we were buying MacBooks, which are very expensive but last longer because of their metal casing. So there's any given school will have its a completely unique footprint of hardware, which makes it very challenging to support from a district standpoint. And it also means that some schools may prioritize hardware buys more than others. So it's really disparate. But the schools are, the district can assess their readiness when they apply for a program. Typically, they'll talk about the leadership's perspective on their instructional vision and their distributed leadership and staffing and how they plan to integrate computer science, as well as their hardware readiness to put kids on computers all at the same time. The district is also in the middle of a capital plan to upgrade the wireless infrastructure for all schools and buy devices for schools, which is a long time coming. So that will help. So that's kind of the lay of the land. I know schools, especially in the younger grades, have bought a lot of iPads. The kind of coding curriculum that gets taught in those early grades I don't think tablets are ideal necessarily for computer science, which tends to still involve a lot of keyboard input. But there are certainly plenty of block-based programs that will work with tablets. So you see a lot of different stuff.
I think one of the to piggyback on that, Mike, one of the key ideas that we've been exploring with grades K and 1 per se is the fact that we actually did invest in tablets, and the reason we did that is not just for the computer science itself, but there's such a plethora of apps that one can utilize on a tablet just to even get that cognition going, and just the whole idea, the spatial tempora of actually going through and touching and moving and grabbing objects. And the apps are the focus, but thankfully, even Code.org has an app now with iPads that you could utilize that's really simplistic, but it reaches the goal of helping students, learning the basic concepts of coding.
Yeah. What are your favorite, some of your favorite apps?
There's way too many to list at this point, but I think there's one of the things that I did as a superintendent is I opened Pandora's box, if you will. IT directors typically, and I'm sorry if you were an IT director or if any IT directors are listening, I apologize in advance, but normally they're very lock, like nothing goes through, nothing gets past, everything is blocked. I instructed my IT director to open up the gates and let anything and everything go through. And we have now an app selection process where if a teacher wants to download an app, thanks to our programming and the services that we have, we push it out to every single device. So it's not just a class set of apps. It's going to be pushed out to every iPad that we have. So, now that we have that process, and it's not just me getting solicited by, another vendor saying, hey, check out this app, it's really awesome. It's really those teachers they're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are exploring and doing. And, we all know so many educators do on their own time. If they find the apps that they want to use in their class, have at it. Who am I to tell you what's okay and not okay? You're the one who's in the classroom. You're the one who's going to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. So, giving that freedom has been a tremendous benefit to our district and really a benefit to our teachers and students.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the professional development? Maybe, what's happening in New York, what's happening in South Jersey here is, as the guy that goes around the district and tries to, I hate to say convince teachers that we need to try this or at least take an hour out to do a code.org activity. How are your teachers being trained, motivated? Talk to us. Jay, why don't you start with you? But what are you doing in Waterford with your teachers?
I think professional development is absolutely paramount for today. If you just give teachers the technology and say, here, use this, it's not going to get used. That happened before I came there. Every classroom got a smart board. And they said, all right, have fun. And they got a document camera. And they said, okay, have fun. No training, no background, no knowledge on how to use Smart Notebook or how to use any software that's associated with the document cameras. And smart boards were used as giant screens to broadcast VHS tapes and DVDs. So, more and more you need that professional development to show people how this is going to work. So over the past 2 years, I've been really fortunate. We have some really incredible technology teachers, and actually librarians have traditionally taken on the role of not only checking out books, but running maker spaces at this point, and also really being the tech go-to and the tech guru. And thankfully, I also have a technology coordinator. Both of them have been absolutely dynamite from day one, who've been really, quote unquote, pushing in and walking around and helping teachers wherever they can possibly need the help, and they're going to get the help. And I'm very adamant about my teachers talking to their administrators and saying, look, I need to know how I could use this in a classroom, or I need to know how to use this app properly. Well, okay, we're going to get you what you need. One of my big three is hire the best, get people what they need, and get out of their way. And I find that philosophy has really come full circle where I'm at now, especially with the computer science initiative. I think before, computer science was something that maybe people dawdled in high school. Now we're hands-on, where kids are utilizing Chromebooks every single day, from music class all the way down to social studies, using a variety of apps and using things that they know how to use. And I know, Mike, you stepped on this before. Some teachers, they have that fear of like, I don't know how to use this. I don't know what's going on. But, my teachers now are taking that concept of, they're going to let their third grader show the teacher how to use this. And there's nothing wrong with that. There was that stigma for a long time of teachers, getting outsmarted by the student. That's not the case anymore. This stuff is so rapid and changing so fast. It's not uncommon where I'll turn to a handful of students in one school and say, hey, what's up with this app? How do I use this? Or, hey, can you code this for me so that it'll work properly? And they'll do it. And there's nothing wrong with learning from other people, regardless of their age. So it's just embracing that concept. That's the hardest part.
I couldn't agree more with that. I think that is a major culture shift. There's a bunch of culture shifts here, right? One is that you may not have the authority with the subject matter that you would like to, right? We're training teachers who have established a high level of competence in another subject area, and now we're asking them to stand up in front of a classroom full of kids with something that they don't really know all that much. In some of the programs that we operate, really the really intensive ones, we'll have them for 100 hours a year. They'll spend 2 weeks over the summer and one Saturday a month all together, like learning something that's pretty new and hard. But they stick together and they do it, and they actually form a community typically around the particular program that they're learning, whether that's the AP course, the new AP course, or something homegrown, or there's a great curriculum called Exploring Computer Science that comes out of UCLA. So there's a lot of there's a lot of opportunity to bond with people who are learning the same kind of thing. But back to Jay's classroom example, I think it's actually kind of amazing when you see a teacher become accepting of the fact that the dynamic of a classroom is fundamentally different from the way that they're used to leading a classroom. I mean, some very good teachers are comfortable with a lot of kind of messy project-based learning and having kids teach one another and kind of circulate around. But that becomes the hallmark of a good computer science classroom, where the work is by definition more inquiry and project-based anyway. So getting teachers comfortable with that kind of environment, I think, is a really good first step.
Yeah, and again, the fact that culture shift is going on right now, and the fact that teachers are embracing that culture shift, we really gone. There's two phrases: there's the sage on the stage, and guide by the side. So we're really taking that concept of, being rows and teacher in front and lecturing and dictating to a real hands-on approach and having kids show other kids, because let's face it, kids learn from other kids. They're not going to listen to me lecture for 25 minutes. They're going to learn from each other when they point out those facts. So when a kid shows another kid a coding trick, or shows them a website, or shows them a new app, I mean, that's gold. That's the educational process that we're looking at right now. So and computer science is such an important part of that. And you have I don't covet your position at all, Mike. You 1.1 million students is that's a big task, my friend. So kudos to you and your team for really going out there and showing people, like, this is the possibilities and this is where we can go. And that's one of the cool things, is that there's so many resources available now. There's so many different opportunities. There's so many different ways to collaborate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether it's reaching out to people on Twitter, or it's signing up for a free, it's going to code.org and getting free resources by the boatload. So it really rests upon the learner, and it rests upon the student to really go out and figure out what they want to use and how they want to use it.
Absolutely. I heard somebody say the other day that, the American school system was designed in a pre-industrial era. And, it's really funny to think that we're still operating within the structures of people and time and space that were set up a long time ago. And similarly, the kids are learning about the same subjects that they studied back then, right? There's really not much new out there. And we spend a lot of time studying, natural phenomena. I heard a great example the other day of, kids spend a lot of time studying volcanoes in school, but they don't really have that many personal interactions with them. Whereas, so much of the world we live in is designed and engineered, and your experience as a person in the world is with objects and technologies and things that have been designed for your use. And so to give kids access to the idea that you are able to participate in that by creating the things that people interact with every day, that software doesn't just happen. The things that you look at on a computer didn't just magically show up there. Somebody actually had to make a lot of decisions to design what you see, how it looks, how it works, what data you see. There's an enormous amount of thought and decision making behind all that stuff. So I think it's an interesting opportunity, not just to bring a completely new content area in, but to actually think hard about how the way in which they do it. So to learn how to be curious and to be a learner in all circumstances. You just mentioned, looking it up. If you or I get stuck on anything, our first inclination now is to go look it up. You figure it out. And so I think giving kids the power to do that right away, and then to help each other, is a great way to approach it.
Absolutely.
We're talking today to Michael Preston, the Executive Director of CSNYC, a fantastic organization that has a goal to bring computer science to 1.1 million students in New York City area, and Superintendent Jason Eitner from the Waterford Public School System. Mike, I know you guys are running a meetup over at meetup.com/CSNYC-education-meetup. Are there other great organizations out there that you're partnering with to continue the mission of bringing in computer science for all students?
So the meetup was actually originally designed for teachers when we first launched 3-4 years ago now, because teachers were very isolated. Computer science teachers, you tended to be like there was one of them in a given school. You didn't have a department, and so we basically started meeting up at various donated spaces from local companies where we said, can we borrow your space for 2 hours on a Thursday night? And it's now evolved into a much more formal thing where we have teachers in our community design and lead sessions where they teach each other about the work they're doing. And I think that's really productive because it gives them visibility to each other, and it also helps folks who have been trained in one specific program the opportunity to hear about what other folks are doing and deepen their content knowledge. So the meetup is something that we do because we started it, and now I think we can't stop. But what we try to do, and this is true across our work, is we just try to be a hub for what other people are doing. We try to communicate with everybody in the space, groups that make curriculum and train teachers or do youth-facing work, and then have those folks come together. So we just try to provide them with a platform. New York, we're fortunate in New York City that there's a very robust education sector, lots of groups that do computer science for teachers and for kids. We try to do what we call a landscape meetup every year. We're doing one at the end of January at Google, where we'll just bring together in a giant room everybody who's offering some kind of program, and then we'll get teachers and volunteers and sometimes students to come in and meet them and give them a sense of what's possible.
Mike, what do you see happening in other major cities? I would assume that a program like yours might be available in Chicago, Los Angeles. Are other major metropolitan areas having similar or different results from what we're seeing in New York City?
That's a good question. It's a little early for results. Everybody's new at this. I think that's one thing that's really exciting and a little scary about this, is that we're all kind of figuring this out as we go. Right. Computer science in K-12 has been around a while. I mean, my first experience with computer science in schools happened decades ago when I was a student. But Chicago was actually the first major urban district to take on computer science, and they now offer, it's required, a graduation requirement for all high school students in Chicago that they have to study, I think, at least a semester of computer science, which is really impressive, and pretty much light speed, considering that they probably started working on this 4 years ago. And so Chicago is a really big district. There's probably about 400,000 kids there. So there's a lot of work to do, and we communicate very frequently with their team. Another urban district that just started was San Francisco, and they're taking a completely different approach. They actually are bringing computer science to all grades K-8. In New York, we're saying elementary schools have to have a plan, and so they can put it in any grade or subject area that they deem as the right place to do it for themselves. But in San Francisco, they're working on getting it to every elementary school and every grade. And they're also doing a middle school program. And then I think they're leaving high school as more of an elective space, sort of an inversion of Chicago. So I think what's great about this is that we can all communicate with each other, compare our results with different curricula and different approaches, and see what happens as schools opt into things and try them.
Jay, what are you seeing as a superintendent? I mean, I know we're pretty lucky to be in New Jersey, where so many school districts are, connected, going future ready, this whole thing. What are you seeing in our local area and really across the country as far as superintendents trying to push their school districts into computer science education?
Well, that's kind of piggyback off of what Michael just said. I mean, there's so many districts that are trying to embrace this right now and trying to figure out how this piece of computer science fits in with all the other requirements that are set forth. New Jersey is definitely on the track between the Future Ready initiatives, Innovate New Jersey, and the scads of other programs that it offers. The state has hinted that computer science will eventually become a requirement for high school graduation, but hasn't really given us any guidance on how that's going to work yet. So we all know it's coming, but I mean, one of the major steps in realizing the urge for computer science, like you, Michael, I remember sitting at an Apple II playing Logo, and that was coding. I mean, that was coding all the way. So I knew it was an important piece. And whether it's your logo experience or your experience playing the Oregon Trail, you're having some type of memory from the past of knowing that coding and computer science and everything else that is associated with computer science is a part of our lifestyle. And again, that's that cultural shift going from, when we were playing logo, that was like a fancy thing that maybe, the upper and, schools with a little bit of extra money had, because they could buy a set of computers and play Mystery House and logo and run basic code. But now everybody and almost everybody has a smartphone or tablet or some type of wireless device. Students in all schools are now in New Jersey are taking their standardized assessments via the internet, unless there's a regulation for special education or 504 students. So you're in a situation where it's not only having to be embraced, but it's having the opportunity to utilize what it has to offer. So again, that cultural shift that compounded with the importance of how it's going to change our society and how it already has changed our society. So people are starting to really understand that, our computers and internet is kind of like a way of life at this point. One of the analogies I use with a lot of teachers and when I give professional development is, if you left your cell phone at home, you'd be going around in 5 minutes. If you left, you'd be freaking out after a half hour, because everything's on your phone at this point. You could do everything from turn on your lights to order dinner to, who knows? 700 apps come out every single week. 700 apps every single week. It's insane. And in order to embrace that, again, that of where we are today, we have to have the skill set of how these things work. And so, I commend what all the major districts are doing right now, whether it's just injecting it as, a basis or having it as a requirement like Chicago does. We have to realize that this is where we are today. And this isn't a fad. This isn't, the edubabble or buzzword of the day. This is a part of our lives, and this is a part of our futures. And since we're in the business of educating the future, we need to provide the future with the tools and the mindset that is required to be of the future.
Well put. Absolutely well put on that one. Jay, I want to throw one last question here before we wrap up everything. And Jay, I want to get your opinion first, and then I'll bring it over to Michael here. Now, this is a very important question here that you kind of tip us off on here, Jay. But if you had to pick one, and I want you to defend your answer, Jay, Oregon Trail, Number Munchers, or Carmen Sandiego? And why?
Wow. I was very diehard Carmen Sandiego. I had the encyclopedia and sat at my computer for hours. But I'm going to have to give it to fording the river with the Oregon Trail, just for the sole reason of not only having great memories as a kid, but being a former social studies teacher. I got to turnkey my experiences and have those kids play. And now reaching out, I had a couple former students last week who were teachers that are using the Oregon Trail in their classes, which is just absolutely amazing. It's a little bit of goofiness, it's a little bit of fun, it's a lot of history, and again, the simplicities of fording the river.
Mike, Oregon Trail, Number Munchers, Carmen Sandiego.
I'm going to confess I've never played any of those games.
What?
Yes. Shocking. I know.
All right.
Oh, okay.
I have done other things, but not those.
What were your games growing up?
If you want here, I don't know if you could see this or not, but this is actually the non-computer version. This came out this year, and this is the card game version of the Oregon Trail. So if you want to, I believe it's $11.95 that you could purchase online, but it's by far one of the best games around. I hope Santa visits you with an opportunity of such game.
Do you actually get the dysentery if you play the game?
You can definitely die of dysentery, and you could also choose to bury that person or keep going. One of the things that I laughed at as a student, and my 8th graders always laughed at, is that when somebody dies on the Oregon Trail, you either give them a proper burial or you just keep going. And you have to weigh the pitfalls. You have to if we give them a proper burial, that's 3 more days off the road and this and that, or we could just dump the body on the side and just keep going, but your morale goes low. So there's so many different scenarios. Such a neat game.
Do you
never played Carmen Sandiego either? Michael,
I really haven't lived.
Jay, we have a road trip going on here up to New York City.
I'm just gonna say I'm coming to the city tomorrow. Tell me where you're at. We're gonna have to school you in some basics here. So,
all right, I'm in. If you guys want to come visit me, we'll make it happen.
I would love to. I would love to.
Yeah,
definitely hitch up the broken wagon wheels. And what is the first question on that game? Do you want to take the Turnpike or the Parkway, and then we can figure out which way to bring the wagon and stuff?
Right.
So yeah.
Can you ditch dead bodies by the Parkway?
That happens automatically.
It's been common practice for a long time.
Once you get above 195, you're pretty much right. Okay, that was going a little bit too local for everybody. We say this at the end of all of our coding, hour of code type shows. We have to continue these conversations. Mike, I definitely want to keep in touch. Definitely want to have you back on the program. And, tell us one more time, where can anybody get in touch with you and reach out to CSNYC? And one more time, can you plug the latest and greatest that's happening over at CSNYC?
Great. So CSNYC, we are the nonprofit that is supporting the city to develop its 10-year plan to reach every student, every school with computer science. We're at csnyc.org. And we are supporting the New York City Computer Science for All initiative, which is now a formidable thing, thanks to lots of great people and belief in this mission. I mentioned earlier that we also launched csforall.org in September. And that is a place where we are just getting started, but there is a members page where you can see, you can filter content providers by grade level and other things. So we're trying to use that as a launch pad for folks to see what's out there and eventually start connecting the community so that more stuff can happen across different cities and states.
And definitely we will have all of these links on our website over on teachercast.net. This is episode 143, I believe. I got to double check that, but it's 140 something in there. We will make sure we have all the links to that stuff. And thank you so much, Mike, for coming on and sharing this. Jay, I'll give you the final word on all of this. Where can we get a hold of you and learn about the great stuff happening in your neck of the woods?
You could just find me on Twitter at J_Eitner, EITNER, and you could go to my website at jeitner.com.
Excellent. And one more time, thank you, everybody out there, for listening to today's podcast on Computer Science Education Week. If you guys out there are celebrating the Hour of Code, we'd love to hear from you. Reach out to us on Twitter at TeacherCast. Leave us a voice message over at teachercast.net/voicemail. Email us at feedback@teachercast.net. And check out this and all of our shows on coding and Computer Science Education Week on teachercast.net/audio and teachercast.net/video. And on behalf of everybody here on the TeacherCast Educational Broadcasting Network, my name is Jeff Bradbury, saying keep up the great work in your classrooms and continue sharing your passions with your students.